My father was a part of William Carter's committee to end discrimination in Levittown in the early 1950s. This group bought a few Levitt houses, and then the white and black members of the group would take turns sleeping in them to confuse the neighbors as to who was actually moving in. And I've reflected that when my father did this, he was actually in more danger than anything he did in World War II. He was in the Army Air Force, and he was stationed in California somewhere, but he didn't go overseas. So he was actually in more danger to do this than his service in the war. And fortunately, the houses were not firebombed, but the black families that moved in were made to feel so unwelcome in that time period that they all moved out after a couple of years, probably. In 1965, my father rented an apartment to Alvin and Margot Petrus. Alvin went on to found a successful dental technician business, which did so well he was able to retire early and devote a lot of volunteer work to the town of North Hempstead in the Port Washington area, for which work he was, they named a park after him, and the county executive of the day, I believe it was Francis Purcell, issued a proclamation for an Alvin Petrus Day. So Alvin and his wife Margot lived in the house that I'm now living in. The rest of the house was my father's dental office. And again, they were made to feel so unwelcome in 1965 that as soon as they could find other housing, they moved. They moved to Freeport, which is a more mixed, more tolerant area than Hicksville. After they moved, the neighbors took up a petition and presented it to the town of Oyster Bay, and they framed the issue as that we were creating a traffic problem by renting out part of the house. The real issue was they didn't want us to rent to a black family again. So the town of Oyster Bay passed a ruling that from that time on, only blood relatives could live in the house. It was one of the values that my father and mother passed down to myself and my brother. He believed that all people have worth and value, and that skin color is not something to discriminate, particularly in case of African Americans who have a awful history in America with racism, which still continues to this day. So we were encouraged to consider that really all people of whatever background or faith group or ethnicity were human beings, equal in the eyes of God. I've attended meetings of Westbury Newcastle NAACP for about 9 years, and for National Action Network for about 5 years. I attended President Obama's first inauguration in January 2009, and I rejoiced along with the rest of the crowd. I think he's a gift from God, and I think that America under his leadership was a wonderful place to live in. Yeah, in 1968, after Dr. King had been assassinated, my major memory of that time is that there was a screening of a movie at the Hicksville High School It was called King, Montgomery to Memphis. It was, I assume, in the immediate aftermath of Dr. King's assassination. It was something put together, to put something out there for the public who were not that well informed about Dr. King or had listened too much to J. Edgar Hoover, who had tried to paint Dr. King as a subversive and a communist and every other kind of bad thing. There probably were protests that my parents went to, like in Christopher Verga's book, which came out last year. There's a photograph of NAACP supporters picketing outside the former Vigilant Insurance building in Hicksville at the convergence of Old Country Road and Newbridge Road. Within the last 2 years, let's say, the the Huntington branch of NAACP won a court case against the town of Huntington for housing that the town controls. The NAACP said that they were renting it out unfairly. It took them 10 years to win that court case. Most branches of NAACP do not have those kind of funds to wage such a lengthy court battle. And the town of Huntington is a politically liberal area. Although I would point out, as Robert Troiano has pointed out, that last year, when Tracy Edwards ran for supervisor of the town of Huntington on the Democratic ticket, every other candidate was white, and they all won. Only Tracy Edwards did not win. I think the conclusion is pretty clear. Tracy Edwards is also the president of the Huntington NAACP, and a black woman. There's a lot of racism in Long Island and everywhere in America. It's mostly in housing. It's in the financial markets. It's in who banks will lend to and who they won't. Sometimes you have to look for it. Some white people think that the civil rights era solved all problems and that everything's fine, but that's far from the case. I think young people today have access to much more information through the internet than people my age had growing up.